Joining us now, Republican strategist Melik Abdul. The president covered a lot of ground in about a 70-plus minute press conference this morning as he sat with the prime minister. Let's start with Gaza. And one point that I keyed in on, which they brushed over, but the president said that Iran interjected itself into the latest negotiations, and President Trump saying that he's hearing and seeing bad signals come out of Iran. What do you make of the current situation and the humanitarian crisis that lives within Gaza?
Yeah, I'm not really familiar what the president is talking about with Iran and how much that is actually true. But this humanitarian crisis is something that really began. Of course, many people, we saw in horror what happened on October 7th. But since then, the humanitarian crisis has been an issue and many people have ignored it. Israel itself, if you look at the recent comments by, I think he's the defense minister, Ben-Gvir in Israel, he's upset that Netanyahu okayed humanitarian aid going into the Gaza Strip. When Netanyahu came to the United States, when he spoke before Congress, gave his address before Congress last year during the Biden administration, he was pressed on the issue of humanitarian aid. And what Netanyahu and many other people have continued to say is that they blamed Hamas for this. But you're looking at what international organizations are saying. They say that Israel has a stronger role here. And I think that's why you're hearing the president, because it isn't just people who are pro-Palestinian. There are people within the president's own circle who are now sounding the alarm about the humanitarian crisis that really does exist in Gaza.
And what type of pressure might we see now in terms of assuring that the aid gets to those who need it? Will there be parameters around the latest aid going in? And what types of assurances will there be?
There should be. Whether or not there will be, I'm not exactly sure. I think the biggest problem here, and it happened under the Biden administration, and now we're seeing the same thing under the Trump administration, it is very difficult to, I'd say, divorce ourselves from our relationship with Israel. Yes, as far as Israel being our strongest partner in the Middle East, I think what's happening is that we are probably reevaluating, and even if the government itself is not reevaluating, the American people are they're beginning to evaluate our relationship with Israel. So what can the United States do? Obviously, the United States can put parameters around the humanitarian aid, but the United States could have also put parameters around the weapons that we send them, pausing the weapons. This is something that the Biden administration did. This is something that the Trump administration toyed with. Those things aren't working. So I think that the United States, unfortunately, will have to be very aggressive when it comes to Israel, but I don't think that that's going to happen because of the influence, whether it's through AIPAC or other lobbyists here in the United States on behalf of Israel. It is a very difficult thing for the United States to navigate, and I don't think that Joe Biden nor Donald Trump will have the answer on that.
The other issue, newsworthy point that is top of mind is Russia. And the president is clearly growing even more frustrated with Vladimir Putin. He says they've had 3 occasions where they've spoken and then missiles fly. He says it's happened too many times and he's not interested in talking anymore. So he's moved the deadline now to 10 to 12 days for Russia to come up with some sort of deal. Are we to believe that Putin listens now when he hasn't to this point?
I'm not sure if Putin will be willing to listen any more than Netanyahu. Keep in mind, these same things have happened in Israel, where we thought that there was a ceasefire. Then Israel, of course, responds in some type of military way. When it comes to Russia, this is yet another difficult thing. Obviously, the idea of the president being able to solve this on day one, it was a campaign promise for sure, but it wasn't a realistic position that the president had. It is another very difficult thing for us to get ourselves out of, because the United States has invested so much money, pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the war in between Russia and Ukraine. And we've seen, whether that's Ukraine not having the facilities to actually deal with working on the weapons after they, on the battlefield, this is something they have to send their weapons as far away, I believe, 800 miles away to Lithuania in order to even get some of those weapons serviced. So the question that the Donald Trump administration had, what can you do differently? And I do believe that Donald Trump should have been given some leeway to actually negotiate this on his own terms. But it seems as if this point, there is nothing that will push Putin to the negotiating table. And our only resort at this point, beyond military force, really is more sanctions. And it's not as if that the Biden administration or the Obama administration or the previous Trump administration hadn't placed sanctions on Russia. It seems as if sanctions are the only way that we can go outside of some sort of military operation.
Yeah, well, we'll see. One quick question on the tariffs. I spoke with a woman in our last hour who makes bags. She was originally manufacturing them in China. Once the tariffs kicked in, she moved that to Cambodia. Then they were highly tariffed, and she's now looking at having to shut her doors. A recent CBS News YouGov poll found 61% of Americans believe the Trump administration is putting too much focus on tariffs, and 70% say there's not enough focus on lowering prices. How do folks reconcile the good with the bad here, and the fact that many small businesses, like the woman that we talked to, may have to shut their doors because they can't survive this?
I think Trump's tariffs policy, of course, is very aggressive, more so than I would argue any other previous president, but it's a lot of unknowns there. And right now we're dealing with the unknowns. As so far, it doesn't seem as if consumers are taking the hit for the Trump's tariff policies. But what happens this time next year? And I'll say again, February, I think March is the first primary date of the midterm season. What will the polls be looking like in February of next year? What will people feel about the economy? Because how people feel about the economy is what they will take going into the polls. So the Trump administration, but also Republicans and Democrats have work to do, because Democrats just can't be in opposition mode. And when you see that the Republican Party and Donald Trump, they're more popular than the Democratic Party, it tells you that both parties actually have some work to do. But the Trump administration just can't rest on its laurels and assume that all of these things that they predicted will pan out. I hope they do, but if they don't, we'll be looking at probably a different situation come midterm cycle this time next year.
Melik Abdul, thank you as always.